Okay, my name is Chana and I kind of want to welcome you to portrait retouching in Photoshop, or in general retouching in Photoshop. I have like a packed ideas for you, and then one of the things that I actually prepared a PDF. So if you choose to download the file that I'm giving you, you have a PDF in there. And basically what I wrote in the PDF is, how do you apport stuff when you start retouching? And then retouching is really, it's something really personal, because I can start retouching something with certain things and then you're gonna say, are you kidding me? That's completely a different way. So it's not like one linear way to do retouching. You can start, like, some people will start from the eye, some people start from this, some people, like the image you just showed me, it's completely different when some of the images that I have here, and you say, well, I want to change the environment, I want to change the background, I want to change the blemishes, I want to make the person look like a China doll. And then another person said, well, that's not going to be real because the person is 70 years old. They do have wrinkles. So you think about the stuff before you start retouching in general. And then few things to take in mind is, first of all, I mean, I know you don't have it, but I have the Wacom tablet here. And I cannot even picture myself ever do professional retouching without using the Wacom tablet, because it's pressure sensitive. I know in class situation you don't use that, which is fine, but if later on you want to go in and do some retouching for real things, you want to use the tablet. Another thing, yes, you have a question?
What about the iPad?
Well, the iPad is not connected to,
Adobe.
it's not connected directly to this Photoshop unless you use Photoshop on the iPad, which there is a whole of almost a full-blown one, but it doesn't have a lot of retouching capability yet, so it's not all of it. But by all means, if let's say you shot something and you just need to do blemishes and everything, you can start on the iPad and then move it back here and then continue doing it. And then if you have the Apple pencil, of course you can do that. I do it all the time. Some people have a third-party kind of like installment that they can make the iPad look like the tablet or another screen. I highly recommend to use this one. This is like my best friend. And there's different sizes, and this is the small one, so you could take it with you and hug it anytime you want. I take it on a flight, I put it on my laps, I can do basically I can't even tell you how much I love it. It's like the best thing. So another thing is make a plan before you start retouching, and I'm going to show the idea what I mean. It's like, if you want to retouch for yourself, that's fine, but if you retouch for other people, make a plan with them. What do you want to retouch? And a lot of time I mark it on top of the image, and we're going to look at it, how it works. So we're going to try to go through some clone, stamp tool, from healing tools, look at the content aware tools, maybe look at some brushes if we can, maybe look at some filters and some object, and then look at some special techniques to enhance, depending how much time we have to do that. It's only 2 hours. Immediate retouching, it's very fast. Good retouching takes longer. And what does it mean? The better retoucher you are, you have to be kind of an artist, almost like to reconstruct stuff, because sometimes somebody was going to tell you, make the eyes kind of wider, and you say, well, there's a liquify tool. Yes, there is, but what if you want to make it not out of the box? You have to do it yourself. So there's a lot of stuff there. They're going to say, can I make it better? Always. Are you fighting with your images all the time? Yes, I do. What I mean that I'm going to try something and say, well, that's not so good, that's not so good, that's not so good, and so on. Does that make sense? So what I tried also to do here, I'm going to show you some few things that we're going to do. So you can see here blemishes before and after, and this is another one before and after, and this is what I meant in like marking the areas that you have, and then that's what you get after. So you can see here there's a little blotch around the arms and everything, and all of a sudden it's better, and all kind of stuff like that. Then I have a whole, we're not going to do that, but you have the files, but it's kind of step-by-step retouching of like a project. So let's say you can see here, you start retouching each one, and then based on different kind of techniques, to create in the end something that completely looks a little bit different. So there's different ideas of retouching. One idea is just to take your portrait and make it look better. So the first one that you saw there is actually my daughter, and she's an actor, so this is what I do for her on a daily basis sometimes. It's like, hey, and so when do you need it? And she said, now. And I'm like, it's 12 o'clock at night, but I have an audition tomorrow. You know, it's like, because she didn't like something that she did. So that's a straight portrait retouching. But then there's environment retouching and other stuff of retouching. And that's why I kind of prepared for you other images in case you don't have your own images. Does that make sense? And then I decided to put it kind of like step by step. So if you want to go over and do this little project later with your own images, you can look at the tools and say, oh, that's what you did here. That's what you did there. Not necessarily it's going to look exactly the same when you're going to do it. And not necessarily when I'm redoing it now, it's going to look the same. Every time, for me, it's like retouching. It's almost like painting. So it's not always I succeed. Like sometimes I'll do something and I'm like, wow, it doesn't look so good. Let me do it again and again and again. And I have actually some samples to show you of disasters that I made myself, which didn't work for a certain thing because the images they gave me to retouch were almost impossible. So it's like, they didn't look good. No matter what I did, it didn't look good. It's like almost I wanted to tell them, go shoot another picture. You know, don't bother me. Does that make sense? So I'm just going to go in and fire up Photoshop. I'm using Photoshop 2020. If you use 2019, it's the same idea. Nothing really changed. How many of you used Photoshop before? How many of you never opened Photoshop before? You open it? Oh, okay. So I'm not going to start doing a whole thing about the interface, but you have to kind of like follow me, because when we go into retouching, kind of like we think you know certain things, and then if certain thing you don't know, like masking, I will actually explain to you. So advanced retouching is actually going in and doing something called like smart object or smart filters. The regular retouching is going to be really, really simple. So I want you to go in when you open that and do File and Open. Either open one of your files that has any kind of a portrait, or you can go into My Photos, and then you can see here I have a lot of stuff there. I like to bring a lot more than really we have, because I never know what people really know and want to do while we're working in this kind of environment. So you can see here I have something called Images to Retouch. And if I double click on it, I can see here the before and after. And basically that's the image that you saw of my daughter. If I wanted to go in and start looking at the stuff that I have. But before even that, I have something that says Healing Tools, which is something a lot simpler than the other one that we have. So let's just double click on the Healing Tools. And you have the Healing Spot and brushes. Do you see that? And then I have another one that has, again, her and another portrait. I mean, the good news about her portraits, I didn't need to do a lot of retouching, because it actually, the photographer she chose were really on spot. Like, really, she liked what he did. It's also depending on the photography, if somebody will do one thing to make sure it's real. So you don't want to go somewhere and say, well, this is my headshot, and they'll say, who? Because that's not you. You know, that's another thing. So I'm just going to go to the Healing Spot and brushes. Do you see that? And you can open yours, and we can figure out how can we work with that. And this is what I have here. And I have a before and after, and then I have the first one here. It says Acne Issues 01. Do you see that? Did you guys download the files? Because this is the link for the files that we posted. So if you didn't download and you want to use my files, you can do that. If you see that, that's the bit.ly, and that's all the stuff is in there. So I'm just going to open that. And let's just investigate it together. Let's pretend we are major retouchers right now, and this is the job that we need to do for somebody, or I am the guy that's going to tell you what to do. So when I'm talking about marking it, is actually going and looking at the image and deciding what do I need to do here and how I'm going to attack this image, right? So a lot of time, people will go to the layers panel, and then you see it says the word background. It is on the background. That's how somebody shot the image. If I wanted to mark and give myself some information what to do, I will basically go to my flyout menu of the layers panel and say new layer. And then maybe I'm going to call it instructions. And that's an empty layer. And then I'm going to go to maybe my brush, click on the letter B. That's going to be my regular brush. And doesn't matter what color, you can do stuff like that. Just mark it out. So sometimes you're not going to do it, but you might get something like this, and then somebody is going to write something like that on the screen. And then they might tell you other stuff too, like let's say instead of this earring, substitute it to another earring. That's another kind of retouching because it's changing the whole thing. So one is taking the real thing and changing it. Another retouching will be completely make it different because you say, well, she looks kind of good, but I don't like the earring. I'm going to put another earring completely. That's a different kind of retouching. Does that make sense? Or she looks kind of good and her legs are not good. And by the way, when you're looking even at a catalog or Victoria's Secret, it's basically not all of them is the same person, and I'm not kidding now. They take it from different places. So somebody can look really gorgeous, but their legs are not that good. So they could be somebody else's legs. So there's a lot of time you just grab something from another place. That's also retouching. Does that make sense? So let's say this is what I want. If I don't want to see it anymore, I just turn it off now. So that's kind of my layers. If you never used Photoshop before, when you create a new layer, you create something non-destructive and basically can mark and do stuff, and then you can turn it on and off for later and see if you have. Some people also will have it still, but might even change the opacity, so you're going to see a little bit the idea or not. I actually look at it and then turn it on and off because I feel like it's distracting me a little bit. Does that make sense? Now let's look at the first thing. I want to go into this area and I kind of want to get rid of this stuff. So this is, I'm going to use a tool called the Healing Spot tool. Why? Because she has spots. So where is the Healing Spot tool? If we all click on the letter J for Joe, it will take you to the healing tools in Photoshop. Let me know if you see them. And there's different healing tools here. There's the spot healing brush. There is the healing brush. There is the patch tool. There's content aware tool. And then the red eye tool. The red eye tool is not a very good tool. It's basically a tool that wasn't updated in Photoshop for a very long time. So kind of we don't use it as much because 99% of the cameras nowadays, they don't have red eye anymore. They just take it away for you. But we're going to look at the healing tools. And we're going to look at the difference between the stamp tool and the healing tool. Because what is the healing tool is going to do? It's going to look at the blemish and it's going to think what's underneath it, kind of with the color of the skin. And then we'll try to heal it a little bit. So how should we use that? We're going to go on top of the background and we're going to open a new, and before that, what I do actually always, if I want to see really the before and after, I will go in and duplicate the background. Why? In case I go into the background and I use all of a sudden the eraser tool and I have a hole on it or something. So how do you duplicate a background? You can go to the flyout menu and say duplicate layer. It basically will duplicate your background. Do you see that? I'm going to duplicate the layer and I'm going to call that Retouch. I just gave it a name. So basically what I'm doing right now, I'm relating just for this layer. I almost like you have to ignore the instruction. I can even go in and delete it for now. But I'm just on the retouch layer. Does that make sense? You do not want this retouch layer to move because it's sitting on top of the other one. So the best way to handle it is go all the way in your layers panel, and you see some lock symbols. The third lock will lock the ability to move it. So you can still do anything you want to this layer, but you won't move it by mistake. I do it all the time. And why do I do it? Because I feel like it helps me. Because I move them by mistake the whole time. Because, you know, as soon as you start working, you get excited and things are moving, right? So now it's not going to move. So if I'm going to go to the layer move tool, this guy, and try to move it, you see, it's not moving. Why is it not moving? Because it's locked, which is perfect. So I'm going to be on the retouch layer. Now I want to use the healing brush, the spot. So I don't want it to be destructive, and you're going to hear me saying it 90% of the time when you want to do retouching, you don't want it to be destructive. Why? Because later on you want to fix it. So that you want to do stuff non-destructively, either open another layer or do all kind of effect that you can go backwards and fix. So I'm going to open a new empty layer. Do you see the layers panel? And you see this little hamburger sign, or some people call it the flyout or the option. I'm going to say new layer. What's the difference between what I did before? I duplicated the other one. This time I'm opening an open layer. Nothing is in it. And I actually going to call it with the name of the tool. So if you save the file later or you listen to the recording, you know what we did. So I'm going to call it Spot Healing Brush. In real life, I might call it left pimples, right pimples, left side, right side, whatever I want to do. But when I show it to people, I usually like to show it with the stuff. So you can do whatever you want to do with your image. Hopefully you have some spots there to start playing with it. And then I'm going to click OK. So one of the things that you have here, you're on an empty layer. Let's all go to your spot healing brush. And you see that the size all the way up is 19. And what does it mean? That's the size of the brush. That's a default. If you click inside, you can change the size of the brush. You can change also the hardness of the brush. All the way to the left, it's going to be a soft edge. All the way to the right, it's going to be a hard edge. It is important when you start retouching, because sometimes you click on something, and if it's a very hard edge, you're going to see these tiny little things. If it's too soft, you're not going to catch everything. So depending how you want to work with it, I might go in and put something in between, maybe find like a soft spot somewhere, and then you can change it while you're working. Now I'm going in, and you can see I have some kind of size. Do you see the size of the brush? If you don't see the size, it means that you click on the cap locks, and that's what you see. So unclick if you have your cap locks, and then you're gonna see that. Another way also to make the brush now bigger or smaller is to go your bracket on your keyboard. The right bracket's gonna make the brush bigger, and the left's gonna make it smaller. That's really a good shortcut for retouching, because while you're doing it, you might need to change the sizes of everything that you have. And then if I want to see what I'm doing, I can also hold down in Mac the Control and the Option key, and you can see here if I click, I'm gonna go in and see the size of the brush, and it gives you like a red glare on it. If you're on Windows, I think you have to go in and hold Control and left and right arrow keys to see if it works. And then I'm going to show you how it works, because it's a little different shortcut, which is kind of like a little confusing. So be on the brush, on this one, It is, where's the control? Is the control, okay, it's here on control and first we're gonna do that. So you can see it bigger or smaller, right? So you have Wheeler, and then I'm gonna see if I go in. Oh no, I'm just clicking on it now. I'll find a way for you guys to see the shortcut for Windows to work with it. But basically the brackets, it's kind of like the one that you're gonna go up and down and play with it. So now, while I have it, I'm gonna go in and click one time on the pimple. And you're gonna tell me nothing is happening. Do you see that? Tell me if something is happening. Nothing is really happening because I forgot to do something, and I forgot it on purpose. You see all the way up in your control here, or options, it says sample all layers. Do you see that? You gotta click on it. So basically you're telling your spot healing brush, sample the stuff from before and then heal it for me. So now I'm gonna go in and click on that, and then you can see I can start seeing some little thing. And then if sometime it will work perfectly just when I go on it, but sometime it's not gonna look good and it's gonna take a little bit your textures away. And that's when we go into our modes over here. You see it says normal mode, and you have a darken mode and a lighten mode. So if you want to go in and heal something that's darker than the environment, you want to work with the lighten mode, and that's going to make a better one. And if you have an area that's a little lighter, you're going to go to a darken mode. I don't have something very light over here, but I can go back here and see what I have. And then if I had a lighter spot, I'm going to go back here and change it to a darken mode. And then if I turn off everything, basically, and look at my healing, this is what I just did. Do you see that? This is basically the healing spot tool. That's what it does directly on the image while you're working on it. And I'm going to go back. So I can go in and click and start working. And then I'm going to go back here, and this is a darken mode, so it didn't do anything, but I'm going to go back to a lighten mode, and you see it's making it. So you can use a normal mode when you don't see a lot of difference, and but if you have, let's say, stuff on the skin that's a lot darker from the regular, you want to start playing a little bit with the mode, so you kind of like avoid getting like rid of the texture, and it's still gonna look nice and clean. Do you see that?
And so you said it's the opposite. If you have a super light spot, you use darken mode?
Yeah,
okay.
Exactly. It's just the opposite. To remember that, it's just the opposite of the other one. So even if I go in, I mean, let's say this one is super light and I wanted to do stuff here, I'm going to go into the darken mode, and then I'm going to go and start kind of play with it a little bit, and that's going to work. And then if I go back here, see, it didn't do anything to this dark one because I was in the darken mode. But if I go to the lighten mode, you see it's going away. If I'm not using any mode, that could be good too. It's depending on the skin itself, how blemishy it is. Sometimes, in this case, it's not such a big deal. She's kind of looking okay, more or less. And that's, everything looks good. And I can go in and just finish that. And all what I use in this technique is basically, I use the spot healing. And the name of it is the spot healing. So of course in real life later, you want to go into this portrait and do something else to it. In this case, we're going to do regular stuff with it. Does that make sense? Because now we're going to jump into another tool, and then we're going to go to the portrait itself and then start fixing it. So the other tool that within the healing tools, if you go to File and Open, I just want you to open something a little more harsh. Let's say Healing Brush, I called it. You see here, it's more stuff to do. We have different kind of things that we want to do. And basically in this case, I can change the blemishes. I can go back here and play with some kind of a filter maybe to make it a little lighter or darker. And that's going to be another kind of step that you work in your retouching. So the first thing I'm going to do here, I'm going to duplicate my layer. And then I'm going to call that retouch. And now I'm going to do the same thing. I'm going to go to the flyout menu and I'm going to say new layer. This case, I'm going to call it healing brush. I can also use the spot healing brush here too, both. But they work a little bit different. What does it mean? If you go to the healing brush, and you're going to see you have the size is 19. I can make it a little bit bigger. I can change the hardness even. But now if I click one time on the screen, you might get this message that telling you option click or alt click to define a source to repair the image. So it's telling you, I'm not that easy. I'm not just clicking on the stuff. You have to do other stuff for me before you're doing it. So you have to take an area that's kind of nice and then go in and fix it. So this tool can take little spots and pimples, but this tool is better maybe for more wrinkles and areas like you see around her nose that she has kind of like a lot of oily stuff around it, a lot more stuff to work with. So once again, before I start doing anything, I'm going to go into my option bar, and here it tells you use current layer and below or all layers. What does it mean? It gives you other options because maybe you want to sample it for more than one layer or just from the layer below. So I'm just going to do current layer and below. So it just samples the layer below. Now I have two things there. I have aligned. Do you see the word aligned? Just click on the word aligned. And then still you have a mode also here if you needed to work with it. But in the beginning, we just leave it in a normal mode. If I'm option or alt click, let's say next to our area, next to our eye that it's lighter and nice, no pimples. And then I'm going to go to another area. Look what starts really going in, and I'm starting going in, and actually, do you see I'm start cleaning the area? And then where the align is checked, basically the sample stays from the same stuff, and it's just gonna continue. So even if I did stuff like this, it continue doing it all area that I have.
So if you don't do it aligned?
If I don't do it aligned, I'm going to option click here and look what happened. Do you see the sample is moving?
Yeah.
And look what start happening. All of a sudden it's not looking good, depending on the stuff that you have. So you're going to ask me, so what do you do? I don't trust the align or the non-align. I keep sampling in real life. What does it mean? I will just go back here and sample, and go back here and sample. So I'm just going to go back and sample. So when I go and resample every time, I basically can go in and get a lot better stuff. But look at this. Maybe I don't like it so much. So that's when I'm going to go again to my modes. If I have areas that are a little darker, I'm going to go to the lighten mode, option click, and now maybe it will go in and look at this. It's less smeary. So it kind of like maintains some of the pixels that I have and makes it a lot better for me. Once again, if I do that, look, this is what I do with the brush. So think about it, not just faces. Think about it, you have a project that you have to do in one of your classes and somebody gives you an image and then some things are not there. You might use this to heal it. When are you going to do it? It's healing it. It's not changing it. What does it mean? It's not cloning it. So it's not the clone tool that will reconstruct. It's basically going to go and heal the area. So if I'm going to a darker one that I have, maybe if I have a lighter area, I'm going to see if it's going to work with me. And here I don't have a lot of lighter areas, so I might go right away to my lighten mode. And then I can go around and start marking around the area, and you can see I got some kind of a nice look over here. And then if something is not working, you can always go to a normal mode and then go in and start seeing what you're doing again and again. Does that make sense? So this tool is kind of like more advanced in terms of doing some stuff to the area that you have. Does that make sense? But what if I have some stuff here and it doesn't still look? Let's pretend I finished everything in terms of going into her blemishes. But I still have an area that I'm thinking, you know, some areas are, I want to make it kind of like bring the textures out and make it a little bit better. So I can go and use sometime a filter. So what does it mean, a filter? If I'm going to go to the healing brush tool and I'm going to hold on the shift key and select the two of them. If I'm going to flatten it, which you're not going to do it, just to make it as one object and then put on it a filter, it's going to be a destructive things to do. What does it mean? Everything is going to look like a mess and that's it. But instead of that, I can make it into something called a smart filters. And if you know what smart filters are, ever you worked with smart filters before. So leave this one for a minute and then let's open another image and we're going to take a look what smart filters are. Really awesome. Go to File and Open. And it will take you back to the area that I have. And then we're going to look at smart filters and smart object. But in this case, you really can open any image that you want. Really doesn't matter. I'm going to go to smart filters and you can see here, I just have an image. Really, I don't care what image you are going to open right now. And then I'm going to open that. So let's say you wanted to create some kind of a filter and make it look like watercolor, or maybe jazz it up and make it look like anything. So a lot of people that didn't know what smart filters are, they will either duplicate the layer, which is fine. I'm going to duplicate the layer. And then they're going to go to their filter menu bar. And in the filter menu bar, you have the filter gallery and you have a bunch of other filters. And then they have other filters over here. Let's go to the filter gallery for a minute. And look what I have here. Why mine is on this one? Because that's probably the last time I went to the filter gallery and went there. But I'm going to go to top artistic and I'm going to click, let's say, on film grain. And I'm going to make the grain really grainy and high-end areas and in intensity. And I clicked OK. And I saved my file. What's wrong with that? If you're going to go back and you have to start working on it, and somebody said to you, what actually did you do? You say, well, I don't really remember. I think I did something from the artistic filters and did something, but I didn't write it down. And I don't know what I did with it. And basically, it is destructive. What does it mean, destructive? For me to figure it out, and maybe I did it a month ago or 2 months ago, I don't know what to do with it. So you're going to say, okay, let's try again. And you're going to turn that off. And you say, oh, it's not destructive because I didn't kill my image. But it's kind of destructive because you don't have a reverse engineering. Does that make sense? So I'm not even need to do that. I'm going to delete the copy. And I'm on the regular background. And I'm going to go to Filter, Convert for Smart Filters. And you're gonna get, the first time you do that, you're gonna get a dialog box. You can enable and re-edit the smart filter, and then you can also be a smart object, and you say, okay, don't show it to me again, because we're gonna talk on object too. And this is what you have here. So now it is really smart. Why? Because every filter except 3 filters or 4 that are not compatible, it's basically going to go in and tell you that it's going to be non-destructive. So let's figure it out. Let's go to filter, and let's say go into the, let's say, pixelate. And let's say pixelate and go into crystallize. And then I'm going to go in and do something completely like this. Look at that. Made a mess. And clicked OK. First of all, when I saved my file and I sent it to somebody as a Photoshop file, and they open it, what did they see? Oh, you used the Crystallize filter? I hate it. So you can do, okay, bye. You see that? On or off. Or you say, oh, I like it, but it's a little bit too much. Double click on Crystallize and say, how about using it just like that? So you see what it gives you? A reverse engineering. All the filters going to be there, depending which one you're using. You can go backwards to them at any time. And then let's say more than that. Now they completely covered everything that I had. This filter comes with, you see next to the word crystallize, or it could be a word filter gallery. Do you see the one that has like 3 lines there? Double click on it and look what you get here. You get blending options. So in this case, you can say, I want to blend it in a lighten mode. So look what you got. I want to blend it in an overlay mode. So you do have a filter, but in a different blending mode on top of the image. You can also say, you know what? I want to make it normal, but I will change a little bit the opacity. All what you just did now, it's absolutely non-destructive. What does it mean? If you start retouching your face or landscape or anything, you have all the information here. You save it as a Photoshop file, and it is in front of you. Does that make sense? So knowing that, let's go into this one. I want to create a filter now. But I want to put the filter on top of the retouch area and also on the areas that are already healed together. So instead of me flattening it, I'm going to select the 2 of them. And in the flyout menu, I can say convert to smart object, which is basically like a smart filter. Or I can go back here and say convert to smart filter. Do you see that? And look what happened when I converted it to a smart filter. All of a sudden, it looks like it's 1 layer. I'm going to go choose not to. I'm going to click on the road and close it. And I'm going to click on the acne issue and close that. Just have 1 area. So what does it mean, a smart filter or a smart object? Within the area that you have, it is an effect that will take whatever layers that you have and put them together, but it's still there. They're not flattened. How would you know it's still there? If you double click on the smart healing brush or smart filter here, look what happens. It's going to open in another area, and look what you have here. It opens in another frame, and you still see this one and that one. You can still do anything that you want. You can add another layer. You can put a bow. You can bring her an earring. What does it mean? I can open another layer, and then with my brush tool, I'm creating like a little earring on her ears over here, but to a different layer. Non-destructive. I might even go in and double click on it and add the earring and make it with the texture. And look how beautiful. She has a stud. on a different layer. Why? Not on the same one, because it has to be non-destructive. Now, if all what I need to do is, I'm going to go in and save, Command S, and go back to the healing brush, and look what happened. Do you see that the smart object has our earring? Does that make sense? I want to make sure, because that's really working with smart object and smart filters going to help you a lot in retouching as well. So basically what it does is it takes you to another screen, and then basically what it does, the first time you do it, it's basically, if you click on it, it's going to tell you something like that. After editing the content, choose File and Save to commit the changes that you have. So I'm going to click OK. So you see anything that I do now, even if I hold on my Option key or Alt key and do another earring over here. See, she has 2 earrings, so 2 layers. If I save and go back to the healing, look what I have there. It's still part of it. Does that make sense? So now, while I have it here, what if I don't want the earrings? I'm going to turn them off, and I save. And now I'm going to go back here, and I see I have a smart object. So I want to go in and make her skin look a little bit kind of different. So I'm going to go to a filter, and there's a filter named Camera Raw Filter. Some of you probably shoot raw film, right? With all kind of stuff. There's a filter that you can put on your JPEGs and put in there. I know you need to leave, but if you have other questions, you can send an email and I can answer you if you do some stuff.
Thank you.
Or listen to the recording later
Yeah.
and see that. So you see Camera Raw Filter. Yes.
And how do you get back to see all of your layers again?
You double click on it and you see that, and it opens in another screen. Whatever you do, you have to commit by saving Command or Control S. So anything that I do here, and usually try to do it on a different layer. Yeah, because it's non-destructive, absolutely, and you don't want to worry about it.
And then how do you go back?
If you save it, you can go back to the original and look at that. It's here.
Okay.
Now if I save the file, you have to save the file as a Photoshop file. If you don't save it again as a Photoshop file, this one, because it was a JPEG, you need to do File and Save As. And if I want to do Save As, this is the new thing. How many of you are using 2020? That's the new thing in Photoshop 2020. You can save it directly to your computer. You can also save it to your document cloud. And basically you can go back and forth. If you save it to the document cloud and you have Photoshop on the iPad, you can start taking stuff that you have. For now, I'm going to save it on my computer. And then I'm going to call it Healing Brush, and it is going to be PSD, Photoshop file. If you again save it as a JPEG, it's not going to maintain your smart object. It's going to be flattened. Does that make sense? So if you want to maintain smart object, you want to save it either the Photoshop file, a TIFF file, or Photoshop big images, and that's it. Does that make sense? So let's say I saved it, it's okay. Now I'm going to go to my filter. Filter, Camera Raw Filter. And it's going to take away, and if we see here, this is your Camera Raw Filter to start with. And then you might see some stuff here. You see on mine, I have some stuff that it's kind of like reddish, because I went in and did the clipping to show if it's too light or too dark. But what do you have here in terms of Camera Raw? In the beginning, you can see here, you can go back to your temperature. You can go right away and see. You see what you can do? Let's say you are still retouching her, but now I'm going to go back here and change a little bit the color. By the way, it's going to be non-destructive because I can go and turn it off. I can go and change it. And then I can go maybe a little bit to exposure. The one that you really want to look at it is the texture. And then you can go back here and look at the stuff and look at that. This is the texture all the way, and then texture goes and takes it down a little bit. So you see, if you go to the texture all the way to the right, wow, I pulled out all the texture from a screen. That defeats the purpose of my retouching right now. But if I go to the texture a little bit to the left, look what I'm getting. Do you see his skin is really soft? And then you have to be really careful not to do it too soft, right? But I'm gonna go and find kind of a way that I really like it. And then I can play a little bit with the clarity. So if I go down with the clarity, you can see it's even, wow, looking good. And look at this, around her nose, I barely see any oil and anything that I have. Does that make sense? So this is what the filter did. But you might say, you know what? Maybe I don't like everything, but I'm good now. I'm gonna click OK. And this is what I have right now. If you don't like it, first of all, you can turn it off. On, off. Also, double click on it and go back to the camera roll and start fixing it. Does that make sense? So do you see that? What I want you to see is the difference between destructive and non-destructive. So a lot of people will say, well, we don't need to know all this stuff. It's not a big deal. It's not a big deal if you need to retouch an image of a kid's birthday, and the birthday was yesterday, and you're 3 years old, and you send the invitation, nobody's gonna care. But if you're gonna work on a project in one of your classes, and you wanna start using engaging images, and you're putting it in your presentation, and all of a sudden you're presenting in between, and you see, whoa, I made a mistake. That's not really looking good. So I can go backwards and I can change everything with no time. Does that make sense? Another thing that I have here that has to do with some kind of masking. And that's kind of something called layer mask, which I'm not sure you guys know layer masking so much because maybe you didn't use Photoshop so much. But it's basically, if I'm just going to do it kind of fast today, it's kind of like a mask that you put on your layer or on your filters, and basically the white will reveal everything and black will conceal everything, and assortment of grayscale, we're going to work with the opacity. So what does it mean? Let's say in this case I kind of wanted the skin to be really, really looking like this. Maybe we have some mistakes, but I'm looking at it and I kind of want it to look like that. But when I'm looking at it, I'm looking at her eyes and I'm thinking they're too blurry. And I'm looking at her lips, maybe they are too blurry for me right now. So, and I didn't do the selection and everything, I just did one filter. So what is my choices right now? And I'm going to show you a few ways of doing it. I can click. If you are on a smart filter or a smart object, you can never go and draw on it. Smart filter and smart object, you cannot draw directly on them because it's going to make it destructive. So I'm basically going to go to the filter. Do you see this little square over here? Every smart filter will come with a layer mask, with a mask in it. And remember I told you, and I'm going to maybe show you how to work a little bit with masking, because that's also essential for more retouching. But in this case, what if I wanted to bring out just her eyes? So I'm going to go to the brush, click on the letter B, and let me know if you are on the brush. And then I can go all the way up here and see what brush and I'm using. I'm going to use the first one, soft round, and I might make it a little bit bigger. And this is the brush. Now, if I am going to go with black, remember what black is doing in masking. Black is concealing, white is revealing. So if I'm going to go to her eyes, I want to conceal the blurriness that I brought in with the filter. and bring out for the stuff under. So with black, I'm gonna go and just draw on her eyes and maybe on her eyelashes so you can see it a little bit. And maybe something with her eyebrows.
I'm sorry, how do you get there?
I clicked on the mask of the filter next to it, not on the filter itself. Does that make sense? And then I went to a black brush. I went to a brush and I went to the default. They're giving you a lot of brushes. For retouching, you want to work with some of the default brushes. And I chose general brushes, soft round, and I just made it a little bit bigger. And then look at this. Now I'm going on top of her lips. Look what I'm bringing from her lips. These are the original lips from before. And then I can go in here and let's say I'm gonna go in on her hair and I'm gonna go in and do stuff. So basically, if I hold on the Option key, this is what I did. I drew on the filter. And then whenever you see black, I basically concealed my filter. Does that make sense? So could be situation that you want to do the other way around. You're going to say, well, I don't want everything to be like this. Maybe I fill everything with black and then reveal stuff with white. How would you do that? If you click on the smart filter and if you go to edit and fill, you're going to get a fill dialog box. And then you have different kind of choices over here. You might go in and say, I want to fill it with black. Look what happened when you filled it with black. Do you see that she looked actually the same before the fuzziness? Now I'm going to go maybe to the same brush. But instead of black, I'm going to change the brush to white. And I might even make it a little bit bigger. And look what I'm start doing. I'm basically drawing on top of her face. And do you see what I'm bringing in? So basically, this is what I did. Does that make sense? If I go back to a black brush, and then I'm going to go in and bring the eyes back. It's going to look really weird now because I'm going to make like something that look like, and then Option click on that. You're going to start seeing things like this. Does that make sense? One of the reasons I told you about using the Wacom tablet, do you see how beautiful I could reveal and conceal the stuff with the brushes as opposed to this one? Especially with the trackpads, it's really bad news for retouching. But you can see the idea and you can practice it. I want to make sure kind of like this stuff is really clear. So even if I go now and double click, let's say on camera raw, I'm just double clicking on it. And I'm going to make something really weird. I'm going to play with the exposure. I'm going to play with the temperature. I'm going to play with the white and black. I'm going to play with different kind of things that I have. I can go back and forth to the area that I have. And then I am going to go in and start playing with the stuff. And then I'm going to do that. And look what happened. Whatever I did now, why did it get some kind of weird stuff on mine? Because that's where I masked. So not everything got it. Her eyes got something kind of weird. That's a good one to show, like black eye maybe. That's also retouching. Retouching is not just beautiful. Retouching could be anything that somebody tells you to do to make it look like something else. Does that make sense? So you're going to say, wow, I really messed it up now. If you really do not want to see it messed up, you can hold on the Shift key and click on the mask. And you turn off the mask. Or you can go in and double click on the filter and then go back to normal and then go back here to the one and say as shot, and it went back to the normal one, and click OK, and now you can see there. If I don't want to have the filter here anymore, I can always fill it back with white. What is white going to do? Completely reveal everything. It's like back to normal. Black will conceal. Grayscale will do in between. So not all the time you have to work with black and white, really depending on the image that you guys are working with. Does that make sense?
So let's say if you wanted to edit, so you did, let's say for like the camera raw filter, you just did like to kind of cover the blemishes, but you wanted to do color in like a separate one. If you, like,
oh
you
yeah,
like over.
Yeah. So let's say I did that, and then I went back here, and I did all the blemishes over here, and then let's say I made it kind of like a little nicer, and the blemishes I did with the healing, and this one was the camera raw filter that had some kind of nice look to it. Now I can go to any other filter. Either I can go to camera raw and go in, do another camera raw filter on top of it and change colors, or I can go into any other place that I want to. So I can go, let's say, to image and adjustment. Do you see that? Image adjustment. If it is a smart object or a smart filter, all the adjustments also are non-destructive. But do you see, you're going to tell me all the way that these guys are not grayed out. They are not compatible to smart filters. That's why. But let's say you said you want to change some colors. So you might go to hue and saturation, or how about brightness and contrast? I mean, you can stay in camera raw too, but let's say you want to do here. And then you're going to go in and say, I kind of wanted to play a little bit with the brightness and a little bit with the contrast.
So the question I had, so if you create
one filter,
yeah, so if you already have a mask on for this,
it will take everything. That's
right.
the thing, yes. Yeah.
Okay, is there a way to?
No, not right now in this
Okay.
version. The mask, it's a great question. The mask is a global mask. It can go between whatever you did to the original. If you really want to do it, you have to figure out and do another image and
Okay.
duplicate it and do it in another mask and everything. That's a real big feature request.
Okay.
Because now it's great question and feature request. Everybody's asking for it. Because whatever I'm going to do now, let's say even if I did brightness and contrast, right? Let's say I'm going to do it really like this, right? And now I'm going to go into the mask. The mask going to go from the brightness and contrast all the way to the original. I'm not going to go and say, hey, camera raw, what were you doing before? It doesn't know it. It's like goes from whatever you have. So if you're going to have information like that, I highly recommend, let's say I'm going to do that, and maybe I'm going to duplicate it and do another smart object and do another one and start playing with it and do different one. Or that's when you start selecting. So let's say I want to go into her eyes only. And it is kind of hard, but I just want to go to the eyes. And then I am going to go to the eyes, and then I am going to go in and go to one of my selection tools. So you have different selection tools now. One new one that everybody is in love with is the object selection tool. Do you see that? It is to, if you have 2020, you have it. If you have 2019, you don't have that. It's object selection tool. And then it goes by selecting with a lasso tool and a rectangle. So if I'm just going to go around her eye, it might try just to select part of her eye. Just selecting an area to target it. Or I'm going to deselect and go in even to my lasso tool and just select some kind of her eye. Do you see here? I just have her eye now. And I really just want to do the eye color now. So if you want to do different areas, you have to start targeting it with a selection. Does that make sense? Now while you have a selection, That's when I'm going to go to my adjustment layers. And what are adjustment layers? Adjustment layers are also a non-destructive way of changing color and adjustment and all kind of stuff like that. Where do you retrieve them? All the way down in your layers panel. Do you see this little circle, half circle, that it goes like black and white circle? If you click inside, you have fill layers, but you can see here, let's click on hue and saturation. You're gonna get a properties panel over here. And you don't see anything, but you can go in and click on the hue and start telling me if you start seeing some stuff with the eyes. I'm gonna click colorize, and now I'm gonna give her some kind of greeny eyes and saturate them. Now whatever you did that goes just to this eye. Does that make sense? Nothing to do with the other thing. It's on top of it, and this is it. Do you see that? On and off. On and off. I can do the same thing with her lips. If I did a nice selection of her lips, like really nice, which I'm gonna try. Let's say I'm gonna go to my quick selection tool, and I'm gonna select just around her lips. I'm just selecting around it. And I don't want it to be harsh. So while I'm selecting it, I'm going to go to an area over here and look at this. You see in the properties, you still have something. Edit content or all kind of stuff. I'm going to go all the way up to my select and mask, edit that, and then I might go and smooth the selection. And maybe even feather it a little bit. So it's going to look a lot nicer. So it's not going to be harsh areas there. And then click OK. And you see it's still selected. Now if I go to hue and saturation or anything, it's just going to do that. So if I'm going to go down here and say hue and saturation, and then I'm going to do colorize, and I might give her some kind of maybe red lips. Do you see that? So if the selection is good, her red lips might look really cool. Of course, there's other ways to do it and make it even better, because there's blending mode and everything, but look at that. If I selected it pretty good, now everything that I have with her, let's say I'm sending her to my client and I say, I am done with this retouching. I'm ready to send it to get a job in a movie because she looks absolutely beautiful. They were looking for somebody with green eyes and red lips and nice looking skin. So if they don't like it, I can say, well, no green screen. See here, on and off. I can go in and turn on and off the brightness and contrast, and I can turn off the camera roll. Do you see that? I have everything in there. I want to change the color of her lips, so I can double click and I can change it to purple. Still I have it here. I can change my blending mode. Do you see that? In my layers. So I have overlay, it's going to look a little bit different. And I have vivid light. So I want you to look at all the elements that you have in your layers panel while we're going to create some kind of retouching. Does that make sense? I know we're jumping into an area that some of you probably don't work with, but I might just go in and explain a little bit more when we go to the next one. Does that make sense? So do you see here, I have that, and I can go in and change that, and let's say I like it like this. And I'm going to give her maybe some blue eyes. Or she looks like whatever the saturation is. Does that make sense? And I can continue. So your question was really great. You can do a whole global one when you're not selecting anything, but then you can start targeting some areas. And that's what you're going to see a lot in retouching. You're going to see that you're going to start going to one area and jump to the other area and play with selection, play with adjustment layers, play with colors and smart object and smart filters. Does that make sense? So now we're going to look at another area, and let's look at other ways of easy, maybe a fast retouching. Could be on a portrait, but could be also a non-portrait. So I'm just going to leave that and then maybe close that, and then I'm going to do File and Open, and I want you to go into photo retouching, and you do have some stuff here, and then I see the word says retouching project. That's the one that you have step by step in your PDF later, that you can go actually, and all the elements there, including the last one. But I'm going to go to another area that says Content Aware, and double click. And look what I have here. I have before and after, and I have 3 images that maybe I need to retouch immediately. So that's also a photo retouching, right? You get a phone call from somebody and they say, the image that you send us for the location to shoot the movie in it has stuff that I really don't like. And we're going to use it, but can you make it a little bit different? So let's click on the first one, Model JPEG, and click Open. And then I'm going to go back here and look what I have here. I have an image in front of me. Let's say you need to do a lot of stuff to it, and then you have to eliminate. So what if they wanted to eliminate the girl that's over here? Or maybe they want to eliminate because the photographer forgot the screen that he shot the image. So you're going to say, whoa, should I go to the healing tool? Not really. The healing tools are not good for areas that you have like really one color and then the other color. They're not for that. Shall I go to the stamp tool? Let's check it out. You can do that too. But how would you do it? First of all, I'm going to go to my layers panel. And the reason I kind of like retouching, because for me it's like painting. It's like, it does, I can tell you, oh, don't do that. That's not okay. I can say, wow, that looks so much better than mine. What did you do? Because maybe you found a way to make it really perfect for yourself. So everybody will do it. So it's kind of not like, there are tools and what you do with the tools. And that's actually why I like it, because it's not like, don't do that, don't do this. So I'm just duplicating the layer. I'm going to say duplicate layer and click OK. So for me to start cloning it, that's a big job. Because cloning it, it's taking exactly what you have and put something else on top of it. So let's try it and then we'll do another one. So I will do a lot of cloning. But when am I doing cloning? I'm doing it more for reconstructing. So if I want to do cloning, I'm going to open a new layer. And I'm going to call it clone. And let's say I'm going to zoom into this area. And I'm going to go to this clone tool. The clone tool more or less works like the healing brush. But instead of healing, it will clone it. What is cloning? Stamping. Exactly the same. So I can go in here and make the brush a little bit bigger. And then it says current layer and below. And I can basically option click somewhere. And then if I go in here, look what starts happening. And then if I option click again, it's going to do it. And option click until I get something. And you have to be careful that you're not doing a lot of textures and everything, because you can do a lot of texturing and it's not going to look really good. So when do you do it? More for reconstructing. So we're going to look at it a little bit later. So we say, well, I want to get rid of it. And I have somebody standing behind me say, get rid of it now. So maybe the clone is not going to be my choice. So I'm gonna go into the clone and delete it. What's gonna be my choice is the content aware tools. The content aware tools has two tools now. The old fashioned tool that's still there for people that use like 2018 still. And the new one, I think it's gonna take over. So I think the old one's gonna go away, but I'm gonna show you where it is. First of all, it is a destructive tool. What does it mean? You cannot open an empty layer. You have to duplicate the layer. It's looking for pixels. And that's what we duplicated. The other tool is if you go to edit, before that, you wanna go to the lasso tool and just select around it. But look how I'm selecting it. Not the perfect way. Purposely, I'm gonna leave some of the grass outdoors, outside. Because I wanna tell the machine, used to be a grass there, can you please put it there for me, basically. Now, the other tool is under edit and fill. You're gonna do the fill dialog box and you're gonna see the content aware area here. And the reason they start changing it because people really complained about it because what this one does is random. I have no idea if it's going to be good or bad. I have no idea how the grass is going to be in there. And if my selection wasn't good, it might actually not take everything. So I'm just going to click OK. Not bad in this case. And I'm going to deselect. And I say, wow, look what it did. It took it away. And you see before and after. Does that make sense? So this is an immediate one. But what if you wanted to do stuff a little bit more? You want to make sure how much you're doing it, and you want to maybe go in and eliminate this girl here. So I'm going to do the same idea. I'm going to select around her and leave some options. And by the way, all these tools, you got to take them with a grain of salt. They're not working on every image. They're going to make disasters sometime, no matter what image do you have. And depending how you select it. And sometimes if you have an image like this, that's on top of a white background, and then the head is on top of another one, and this one, maybe you want to do smaller selections. But I'm going to do a big selection. And this time, we're going to go to Edit and content aware fill. Do you guys see that? This is only in 2019 and 2020. If you still have 2018, you do not have it here. Content aware. And look what's going on now. Now what you're getting is absolutely an immediate preview. It comes, and I am a sucker for previews. I do not like any filters or anything that doesn't have a preview. I refuse to use it. I mean, I'm using it if I have no choice, but it takes so much time. So look what it tells me here. This is the preview menu, and then if I click, hold on the space bar, I can move here, and it tells me I selected this area, and kind of by default, Photoshop decided to sample stuff from this area. So all the areas that are green right now, it's basically Photoshop tells you that's where I sampled from. Do you see she disappeared from here? But maybe you don't like it the way it is, because maybe this area, and I can also go back here and see how it looks and say, she disappeared, but maybe I can do it better. So now you can go to your brush. And then the minus, you can say, I do not want to sample anything from this big house here. And as soon as I did, it will change some stuff. And I'm going to say, I don't want it to sample from here. You see it changing. I will stay a little bit white area. Why? Because she was a little bit on white. But I might say, I don't want to sample this area. I wanted to take just the grass from here. Does that make sense? So basically, they start showing you how they are going to fix it for you. And then you can have an auto one. You have a rectangular one that you can go in. and straighten the area, and you have a custom one that basically you're gonna go in and start from the beginning, and now it's gonna go in here and then tells you which area to go in and start taking. See, now I'm just doing like this. That's not looking good, see? And then I'm gonna go back here and I'm going to go and say that, and that's gonna go in and start eliminating stuff. And now custom that, it just does it like this. So let's say I like what I see. The good news also about it, the others go on the duplication. Here you have a choice. What does it mean? Do you see the word output setting? In the output setting, you can output it to a current layer, and that's gonna be on my duplication. Or I can say, you know what? I wanna put it on a new layer. Or I can duplicate. I'm gonna put in a new layer and click OK. And then I deselect, and now when I'm gonna go to my new layer, look what I'm having. This one is the bottom layer. This one is the original. This one is my content aware. So what are you gaining here? Because it's on a new layer. If it's a little bit not great, later on if you know masking, you can mask it a little bit. You can even go in and say, let me play a little bit with the opacity, and I have a ghost. And she's back as a ghost. It's an idea. All kind of stuff like that, you can go back and forth and play. You can even go in and play with the multiply mode and the darken mode and the overlay mode. But if I leave normal, she's kind of good, and I can go in and play with it, and it's on a different layer. Does that make sense? How cool is that? This will help you a lot when you have to do immediate retouching. If you are working on a campaign and somebody shot something and she had to leave, and all of a sudden you shoot a lot of people holding the product, and one person on the side, you don't have copyright, he didn't sign the release, is there, make him disappear very fast, and then go in all the cloning and make it look nicer. Because sometimes you won't be able to crop the image because he's in the middle, but you can make it go away. Does that make sense? So basically I did that. What if I wanted to continue doing it? I'm going to click again on the background, and now look at her. I'm going to go now at her, and I'm going to select it again, and look how I'm selecting it. If I'm selecting it not good, let's say I've selected her like this purposely, and I'm going to go to edit and content aware fill, and then I'm going to go in and see that. Look at this. Do you see her? Her head is still there. Why? Because I didn't select it the right way. Does that make sense? So I can say, you know what? Let me add to the selection because I did a bad job. Look, see, she disappeared. I did a bad job here. It shows you if you don't give it enough edges to breathe, it won't find the edges. You have to give edges. And now let's say I like it or not. Sometime, and I tell you the truth, I don't like the way it does it automatically. Sometimes it makes it fuzzy a little bit. Then you have to go in and do some sharpening to it. So it's not like one step fit all. It's one step maybe. I'm going to show you another one that doesn't really work great. Because I like always to show stuff that maybe it doesn't work right now. And that's the one you're going to need to do something in your new job the first day. And you're going to say, well, she said it's going to work. Well, they bought another image. So if I'm going to click OK, and let's say put it in a new layer, deselect, do you see here? It's kind of a little fuzzy. So maybe I'm going to do something to it a little bit later. Maybe with the smart filters. Maybe I can go in and this is fuzzy. So I can always go to it and go to filter, convert to smart filter. And maybe try to go into, let's say, sharpen it. And maybe it's going to make it a little bit better. And then once I'm sharpening it, maybe it's going to go in and look a little bit better. And then I didn't see anything on it. but you can, it's an idea to go in and sharpen everything, and it's going to look a little bit better. Does that make sense? So I have that, and I finished this, and look at this. Now you can just send it to your client and start working with it. What if though you're going to go in and they tell you exactly what they want to fill in there? So you can do it from the content aware, the one I showed you, but there's another tool that you might go directly into it. And again, I'm showing you all this retouching and healing tools. In the end of the day, you're going to use all of them or none or in between. You're going to have favorite tools. I actually, because I like to paint and I have the tablet, I like to do a lot of stuff with just brushes. I'll figure a color and paint a little bit and then put some dust and scratches on it. So this, depending how you're going to work with it, you're going to start establishing some stuff. But I want you to do File and Open and go into the backpack and click Open. And look at this one. This one, I have the backpack. I can go to Content Aware and then tell it to put in there. But what if I want to put in there something completely different automatically? So first thing, I'm going to duplicate my layer. And then I can go and select the backpack. And you see I'm not selecting it perfect. If I do any of the content aware, it is going to go in and put in there something from behind. But what if I wanted, for some reason, to put the grass in there? That's another tool. If you click on the letter J and click on the healing tools, remember the spot healing and the healing brush, there's another tool there called the patch tool. This patch tool is also for something to retouching. You can go from one place and retouch from the other one, but it also has a content aware in it. So you see all the way up in your option, you see the word normal. Do you see that? Click inside and make it into content aware. Now you see the patch and you click on it and you start moving, holding and holding, and you say, maybe I want to have this grass in there. And I'm going to release, and it's going to give you a preview of this grass that may be going in there. A preview still. And the selection is still on it. While you still have the selection, maybe you don't like it as much. You can go all the way up there and you're going to click on the structure. The structure is going to take how much of the area that you put in there it's going to go and how. If I go, let's say, to 1, look at this, edges are really fuzzy. If I go to 7, it's a lot harder. I can also play with the color. Sometimes when you play with the color, you're going to get some kind of like fuzziness or things that are a little blurry. And sometimes it's going to make it really good. I can't tell you which image is going to do it good or which image bad. If I deselect, look what I got. Now what I have here, it's basically on the new one. Do you see it? The backpack is changed with this area. I can also go with this tool. It's also a selection tool. With the same tool, I'm going to go next to it and I'm going to select something. I can even, while I'm selecting it, go to select, modify, and even feather a little bit the selection. So it's going to be a little kind of edgy. And then I can go in and tell stuff to go in there. And then I'm going to deselect. So look what I'm starting to build. All of a sudden, I'm starting to build and putting other areas inside. So it's kind of like, for me, it's a cross between the content aware and maybe the stamp tool and telling you what's going in there. I think in the future, they're probably going to get rid of that and put it inside the regular content aware, the big one, and tell you, put me in there. and took this one and not have so many tools together. But basically this one came in. So let's say if I want to do something weird and I say, well, I want to have a waterfall in there, it's going to put that in there. Is it going to look good? Probably not. But I'm going to try to do my best. Let's say I change the colors a little bit and then the structure a little bit. And now if I deselect, you're going to say, wow, that's awkward. So, but I can play with it later and add to it some other tools and then fix it. Does that make sense? Again, it's non-destructive. It's on a different layer. So that's kind of like also retouching tools that you can go to one place and put it in the other one. I'm going to go File and Open. And let's go into our photo retouching. And then I have another one in the healing tools. And I want you to open Venice JPEG. This one, it's going to be hard to do content aware to it. Why? Because it has some weird stuff in it. It has textures and it has text. So that's one you have to kind of play with it a little bit different. So let's say if I'm duplicating the layer and then I'm going to try to do content aware, and I'm going to go to my rectangle tool and click on the area here where the people are. Of course, if I didn't want them, I can crop it. But let's say somebody said do not crop. I'm going to go to Edit, Content Aware. And then didn't do actually a bad job. I'm really surprised. So do you see that? Not a really bad job. I thought it's going to be worse than that. It actually put in the bricks in there and then put a little bit of the brick here. So I'm just going to go in and maybe go back and take this one away. And then I have some other stuff, color adaptation. I'm going to make very high adaptations. You see it's just did the colors and adapting it. They have the rotation. So it's going to go in and using scale mirror rotation with auto sampling because unexpected one. Just want to show you that sometimes you're not going to like what you see. I try not to use it as much, but let's say I got that. And then of course I can scale. They're always going to tell you. Didn't like that. You see that? It's not looking good. I'm actually surprised with this image how better it looks than it used to be with the regular content aware. I can make it into a new layer, and in this case, look at this. Deselect, and I have that. So if you want to get rid, let's say, of the coffee, I don't know if it's going to do it exactly, but I'm going to go in and basically select that and put it on the background and do Edit, Content Aware. And you see here, that's the problem. Do you see what's going on now? So now it's kind of like fuzzy. So I might go in and say, well, I don't want you to put any bricks. Maybe it'll be a little bit better. But I don't want that. And I don't want this one. But you can see here, doesn't look so good. I'm gonna have to fight it. So how would I do that if I really need it? I probably gonna go in and put in there brick before and do other stuff. So there's other things that you can do later with masking and duplicating to create something else. Does that make sense? So now, just to sum it up, I want you to go in and let's look at the portrait. So I'm going to do File and Open. And then I'm going to go into my area there and I'm going to go into Portrait Retouching. And then I'm going to go back here inside the images to retouch. And you're going to see here, that's this one here, or that's the after. Where did I have it before? I think I had it before. Didn't I have her before? Images to retouch. Images, okay, portraits. Okay, did you guys, how many images do you have in images to retouch? Only one there? Okay, so let's go and open that. And then look what I have here. It's already retouched. And let's check it out and then do stuff with it. So what do I have here? I have something says blur. And you see here there's a filter say Gaussian blur. And then you can see inside, if I hold on the option key, I kind of turn off some of the blur so her eyes are not blurred. And then I have another one that says retouch below that. And then I have this one and this one, and then I have another one on top of that. So I have, like, let's say the markup. Where do I want to go in and do that? So you see all the way up the word blur, it is a smart object. What did I do there? Because I wanted to take this one out and that one out. So I'm going to double click on it. And it is going to open, and I basically moved it a little bit, and look what I have here. Of course you want to start using, and you see this one is another smart layer, and then you see here I have the regular one. So let's say we want to go in and start working on her. What I'm going to do is delete everything, and let's see what we want to do with her. And let's zoom in and look at that. What do we want to do? Do you see I have some problem here? Maybe I want to go and get rid of it. Maybe I have some flyaways on her head that I want to get rid of it. And maybe if I zoom in, I do have too much makeup and too much stuff that I want to go in and start working. So I have to start looking, and in the markup I had it, they're telling me. So the first thing we're going to do is duplicate your layer. So I'm going to go to the flyout menu, and I'm going to say duplicate layer, and I'm going to say retouch. So what do we want to do in the first one? We want to maybe go in and take away some kind of pimples maybe, and maybe some kind of little wrinkles. So what should we do? New layer, and then I'm going to call it healing spot and brush. Maybe I can do it together. A lot of time I won't do it together. I would just do different layers to different ideas. But I'm going to have it here, and I'm going to start working. So let's go to the healing spot. It already says sampled layer. What does it say? Because I had it from before. It will stay exactly the way you want. And then I'm going to go to an area and start clicking, and I'm going to go back here and click on some areas that I think I have some kind of little dirt around. And it's a lighten mode. I can go to a darken mode, or I can go to a normal mode. And I'm still on the spot. Not so many spots there, because I might need to go in later to another tool. And let's say I kind of liked it, and I'm going to go back here and look at this tiny little spots. I can still be on the same one, or I can open another layer. So if I just want to dedicate that to this one, I can open a new layer, and I can call that healing brush. But if we do that, and I'm going to go to the healing brush, that's when I'm not going to say current layer and below. I will say all layers, because I still have other stuff to sample. And now I have to go in and do a line, another line, and Option or Alt key, I think everybody's Option, right? I used to Alt. Go into an area that it is good, and then now start sampling. And then I can go in and Option click, and if I don't want to do a texture, I might go in and make it in a lighten mode and see the dark area, maybe it's gonna change. And then maybe I'm gonna go to a darken mode, like next to her nose, or just stay in the same area. So you can see what I'm doing. I'm actually resampling. I would leave, let's say, a smile because it's kind of nice. But I'm going to go back here and see, do I want to do stuff here? And then these are the flyaway. I can actually go in and take them away with my healing brush. And you have to be careful. And then I'm going to go back here. And then this is the flyaway. And then if it's aligned, it's basically repeating the area after you. And then that's another flyaway on her forehead. Be careful when you're sampling to make sure it's all good. But now I'm just gonna go and maybe try. I might need to rebuild it in a different way, because that's gonna be a lot harder. But what I'm going to do now is, if I like some of it, I'm going to select the Retouch, the healing brush, Shift key, and the three of them, and I'm going to make it filter, convert to smart filter. And I'm going to say Retouch 1, because I might do another one on top of it. And now I'm going to try to create something. This filter might not work in this case, but we're gonna go to our liquify filter. Where is it? Filter, liquify. Do you see there's one filter is now working, grayed out, vanishing point. It's a neither retouching tool, not compatible to smart filters. And then there's another one over here. Let's say this one under render, not compatible to smart filters. I'm gonna go to filter and liquify. And this is what I get in liquify. It basically takes you to another screen. And then the left side are the tools. So the first tool is the one that's warping. The second tool is reconstructed. What does it mean? If you warp too much, it unwarps it. Then you have another smooth tool, and then you have other warping tools that I use it less. That's more for like special effect, but for retouching, it's actually the first one. And then you have another area here that you say freeze mask, and then you call it thaw mask. And then you have an area for the face. What does it mean, mask? If the area that you don't want it to move, you freeze it with the mask. So I'm gonna go in and zoom into this area. You can zoom in with the zoom tool or with the shortcut Command plus or Command Control plus. And I'm zooming into this area. This area I might need to do another reconstruction better than that. But you can see what I did on my original, I made it kind of different. But now I don't want this one to move here, and I maybe don't want some stuff here to move. So I'm gonna go to my mask brush, and the size is right now 100, and right now the color of the mask is probably red. You can see it all the way down. So I'm gonna go in and put in the area that I don't want anything to move yet. And then maybe I don't want this one. And now I'm going to go to the warping tools. And I'm going to make it a little bit bigger, and I can start moving it. It's not going to do the entire thing because you might need to do a retouching. Because you see what it does? It kind of like goes in and brings it like a little trail there. But I can try to do that and then go in and do another retouching. If I don't like something that I did, I can go in and reconstruct it. I can also show the image, not show the image. I can also go in and do a preview, on and off. And I know it's a kind of tough one because there was the really purple one, but I know it still did something. If I like it, I click OK. And what I got in here, I got something that looks like this. I moved it a little bit, but maybe now I can go to the clone tool and then start bringing in just the purple area. It's an easy one to do. If I don't like it, I can go back here and play with it. But I'm going to leave it here for now because we're going to clone it again. But what if you wanted to do something else with your liquify? I'm not going to go in the same one. I'm going to say again, liquify. So it's going to open another one. And in this one, I want to go to the eyes. And I'm going to click on the face. And that's when you have brush options, but next to it, look at this. Face aware liquify. You can go into the eyes, and if you link them, they are going to go in and make the eyes a little bit bigger or smaller as much as you can. Do you see that? I'm going to make something very weird on purpose. You can do each eye differently. Let's say this eye was not big enough, so I can make that. You can go to the height of the eyes or down. You can go to the width of the eyes. You can go to tilt them. Be careful, because you can make it cross-eyed or something. You can also go and change the distance. You want it like this, you want it like that. Of course, you have to play with it a little bit if needed. Then you can go into the nose. In this case, her nose is kind of cute, so I'm not going to do anything. But I'm going to go and make her smile a little bit more. Or maybe not. So you can do, be careful not to do too much, of course. But all this stuff, you can go into the upper lip and make it upper. You can go into the lower lip and make it bigger. And make it bigger and smaller. And then all that. And of course, you can go in and just change the stuff. So maybe the forehead a little less. And maybe go into the chin and put it there. And if I clicked OK and zoom out to it, you can see here that this is this liquify. And the other one is the bottom one that you have there. So I have two liquifies and each one did something else with it. Does that make sense? So you can go in and create different kind of things with it. And of course for this one, I might go in later and just go in and cut some of the blue and go in. So if I want to go and fix that, I might go in to my, call it clone, and maybe go to the clone stamp tool and option click and start bringing in some of the blue. And I'm going to be very careful when I start working with it. And I might zoom in and then option click and do that. So I might even do something really straight until I get really, so if I don't want that, I can start working on it and then I can start retouching the rest of the stuff. So you can see and maybe add a little bit of a dress and all of a sudden you can see it's not looking as bad as before. If I'll go in later to show you the original, You see, I actually went in and stitched it a little bit better. But now if I want to go back to the retouch, I can go in again and go into my camera raw filter. And then I can go in and play a little bit with my texture. And then play a little bit with my clarity. And I can see now that, look at this, it's all really great. The only problem that I have, this one wasn't part of it. Do you see that? Because it was not just on top of it. If I wanted it to be together, you do another smart object. That's why you saw a lot of them together, so you want to match the stuff that you have. But now I'm gonna go in here and I can decide what do I like in it. I like that her face is kind of blurry in this case because the skin looks a lot nicer. But maybe I'm gonna go back here and then I'm going to my brush and I am going to go in, and the problem I'm having here, look what the problem is. That's what you said before. So I should have done it maybe to another smart filter because it wants to take away my liquify. And my lips. And this one I didn't touch, so it does it. And then I'm gonna go back here and you can see before and after. So if I really wanted to go in and do the camera raw filter on it, I probably gonna need to go and duplicate it.
So, but if you duplicate it, won't it copy everything that's underneath it as well?
Yeah, but I can do that. I can duplicate that. Oops. And then I can go in and decide that I don't want that and I don't want that. And then do the one with this and decide which one on top of each other or something
So
like this.
Toggle the view.
Yeah.
Okay.
So that's how I'm gonna go in and put the stuff in there, and then I have the camera filter over here, and basically so I can work with it. But yes, the liquify is kind of like almost taking over, so it's kind of like making it a little bit different, and that's when you have to start working with it. Or first do the fuzziness and then do the other one and then kind of like duplicate it and see with everything. So maybe you're gonna go in and actually not work with the masking, so depending how you're gonna do it, and then start working with the stuff that you have. Does that make sense? So you really have to pay attention how you're working with all the stuff. So if I'm gonna go in, let's say revert it to the original, I know I moved it a little bit, but look what I have. In this one I have the Gaussian blur, which is another filter that you can use. And then if I double click on the smart filter, it is going to open, and look what happened over here. Basically I have this one here, and I do have the arms. See what I did? I rebuilt it. I cheated, but I rebuilt it. I went in there, and then if you're looking at that, I basically copied it from this area and put it over here, and then ended up masking it. And then underneath that I have a liquify, and in this one I end up doing all the stuff that I had. So a lot of time in retouching you need almost to do like a stitching talk or something, because you're gonna need to go in and move stuff from one place and bring it to the other one. Does that make sense? But basically what you really need to look at is the healing tools that you have when you're looking at an image. I thought I had other images there. I thought I brought you a bunch of images in the retouching here. Content aware, changing images to retouch, before and after. Images color adjustment, or maybe it is under the healing tool. Oh yeah, I have other portraits under the healing tools. That's why it is. So let's say even if I double click on that. So this one doesn't have so much stuff, but maybe in the healing, maybe I want to take some away, some of the, let's say the freckles or stuff that's not there. I kind of like them. I think they're nice. But if I wanted to take away the stuff, in this case, I don't have so much work as some flyaways and maybe few little things. So first I'm going to look at what I have to do. And maybe I'm going to say, you know what? It does look actually okay. I just want to go in and maybe make the teeth a little bit wider. Or maybe I want to go and do stuff like that. So what if I do the teeth wider? I'm just going to go in here. First of all, I'm going to go in and make that as convert to smart object. So I know I have a smart object already. But now on top of that, what I'm going to do is I'm going to take a new layer. That's another technique. I'm going to do a new layer and I'm going to call it lighten. And this new layer has nothing in it. I'm going to go to edit and fill. And I'm going to fill it with 50% gray. And I'm going to put it in an overlay mode. So you basically, this is what you have. You have that over here and it's still covering. But I'm going to go in here and make it in an overlay mode. You don't see the gray. Do you see that? And this one works is with another tool. I'm going to go to my dodge and burn tools. And I'm going to go to the dodge tool. The dodge tool, if you go into an area and depending on the exposure and the mid-tone, if I'm going to go on top of her, let's say, teeth, I'm actually making them a little wider. My brush was a little bit too big, so I did also her lips. Basically, if I'm going to turn it off, that's what I just did. So this technique will go in and you can go into, let's say, her eyes now, and then I can go in and make her eyes a lot lighter.
So why use the dodge and burn tool and not just color over the gray with like a white and black? Is there something different?
Yes.
Okay.
The dodge and burn tool, that's kind of like a tool that's going to do the mid-tone of the area. That's kind of the technique that you have. So that's another one. So if I want, let's say, eyebrows to be a little bit darker, I can do it in the same one, but I can also duplicate that. And then that's going to be kind of like the copy, and you see it's kind of one on top of each other. So if I wanted to do that, it's going to be like one on top of each other right away. But I'm going to go back here and make it soft light. And then maybe I'm just going to go into the burn. So that's kind of like a tool that a lot of retouchers use it together. And they're going to put it, I can also go back here and make that into a smart object. And look what happened. It's soon, and that's why I'm showing it to you. Because if you make that into a smart object, look what I lost. The blending modes. So you're going to have to go back and do it again. Smart object, it's hard for them to relate to the original blending mode. And that's why I have it here. And now you can see the before and after. And of course I can go into the opacity and not make it so harsh. So this is kind of like another tool to work for you and play with the dodge and the burn. In general, dodge and burn, you can start clicking on stuff. So it won't let me do anything on dodge and burn here. But if I'm going to double click here and go to another layer here, and then maybe I even duplicate it and go directly to dodge and burn. Let's say I'm going to go dodge, you can see it. And then I'm going to go in here and go to more exposure. That's more or less destructive what I'm doing right now. And I might do the exposure a little bit more. And then if I save it, and I'm going to go back here to the area that you have, basically you can see here that the hair is lighter. But you cannot do it here because it won't let you. Any of the drawing tools do not work on Smart Object. None. You have to do somewhere else. Does that make sense? Why? Because it has layers somewhere else. Does that make sense? So, in general, any questions? I know we covered a lot of like little tips along the way. And also, you guys, if you're not really amazing with your with layer mask yet, so maybe you want to read a little bit in the PDF. I'm talking a little bit about, in the project that I'm doing there, I'm talking a little bit about smart filter, smart object, and also the layers itself. Really, to be up with retouching, you need to know the healing tools, you need to know the other retouching tool, but it's really going to make life a lot easier if you know smart objects, smart filters, and layer masking, because you're going to go and cover a lot of stuff that you have. The last thing is, if you really want to practice it, you can always go into a brush. I'm just go in, and brush are destructive. So what does it mean? I can go in, and let's say I just did that, and I'm just doing stuff, but if I'm going to go into some blending mode, see multiply, all of a sudden I gave her some kind of nice, and this is kind of a destructive, but you can go and play with it. So you can select the hair and make it color with adjustment layers, but sometimes people like to paint. And then see, I'm just painting directly. What really the suggestion is, if you paint and you do different colors, please open a new layer. Because if you don't open a new layer, that's when you are going to kind of like, and let's say I'm going to go into a new layer, and I did the overlay or pin light or hard light and multiply, depending on the blending. And now look at this. I'm recoloring ahead and everything. So if I made a mistake, I can go to my layer mask and fix it. So if you're working with brushes, it is destructive. You start opening a lot of layers, because everything that you're going to do with your brush, it's destructive. Does that make sense? Any questions?